you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These are the words of Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who, amidst the chaos of ruling an empire, mastered the art of inner peace. Now think about your own life for a moment. In a world where notifications buzz endlessly, decisions pile up, and the pressure to keep up never seems to fade, it's easy to feel trapped by your own thoughts. Overthinking becomes second nature, pulling us into endless what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. But what if there were a way to break free from that mental overload? Stoicism, a philosophy born over 2,000 years ago, holds the key. Today, we're diving into 13 powerful Stoic practices that can help you quiet the noise, regain clarity, and take back control of your mind. Stay with me as we explore these timeless principles that are just as relevant now as they were in ancient times. This journey could transform the way you see yourself and the world around you. Let's start with one of the foundational ideas in Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, famously said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." This simple truth holds the power to transform how we approach life. Overthinking, at its core, often stems from trying to control what we simply cannot. We replay conversations, obsess over potential outcomes, or worry endlessly about things like other people's opinions or future events that haven't even happened yet. But here's the problem: none of those things are within our control. Think about it. Have you ever stressed over someone else's judgment of you? Maybe you gave a presentation at work or posted something on social media, and you couldn't stop wondering what others thought. The nervous energy builds up as you imagine every possible reaction. You spiral, trying to figure out how to make everyone approve of you. But here's the reality: their judgments, their thoughts, their reactions are not yours to control. No amount of overthinking will change what someone else feels or says. What is in your control, though, is the effort and intention you put into that presentation or post. You get to decide how prepared you are, how authentically you show up, and how you respond to feedback afterward. That's it. The rest, it's not up to you. When you focus on what's within your control, you free yourself from the hamster wheel of endless what-ifs. Instead of wasting energy on the unpredictable, you redirect it towards something meaningful: your own actions, choices, and mindset. The Stoics called this exercising your rational mind, your ability to discern the difference between what you can influence and what you cannot. And once you start practicing this, you realize how much emotional weight you've been carrying unnecessarily. Take a moment to reflect. What are you holding onto right now that isn't truly within your control? Maybe it's the outcome of a situation at work, trying to please everyone in your life, or even the fear of what tomorrow might bring. Ask yourself, is this really something I have the power to change? If not, it's time to let it go. By releasing what's outside your influence, you create space for peace, clarity, and the ability to focus on what truly matters. The dichotomy of control isn't just about letting go. It's about empowerment. It reminds us that within the chaos of life, we still have agency. We can choose how we think, how we react, and what we prioritize. And that's where our true strength lies. What if everything that happens to you, yes, even the setbacks and struggles, was exactly what you needed to grow? This is the essence of Amor Fati, or loving your fate, one of the most profound and liberating practices in Stoicism. At first, the idea might sound radical. How can we possibly love the challenges, disappointments, or losses life throws our way? But the Stoics didn't suggest we simply tolerate these events. They encouraged us to embrace them fully, as if we had chosen them ourselves. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it perfectly: A good person dyes events with their own color and turns whatever happens to their own benefit. The wisdom here is simple yet transformative. Overthinking often comes from resisting reality, from mentally fighting against what has already happened or what is beyond our control. We replay painful moments in our heads or obsess over what could have gone differently, wishing the world were other than it is. But Amor Fati reminds us that there is no benefit in wishing for a past that didn't happen or a future without obstacles. Instead, it challenges us to see every event, no matter how difficult, as an integral part of our journey. Imagine, for example, that you've been passed over for a promotion at work. The immediate response might be frustration or self-doubt. You might overanalyze every decision you've made, endlessly replay conversations with your boss, or wonder why things didn't go your way. But Amor Fati offers a different approach. Rather than seeing this as a failure, what if you reframed it as a lesson? Perhaps the experience is nudging you to develop new skills, rethink your priorities, or even explore opportunities you wouldn't have considered otherwise. By embracing the situation as if it were meant for you, you take the energy you'd have wasted resisting it and redirect it towards growth. This mindset shift doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect or ignoring pain. It's about acknowledging that life is a mix of joy and struggle and choosing to find meaning in all of it. When you approach life with Amor Fati, even the hard moments become opportunities to cultivate strength, patience, and resilience. You begin to see challenges as stepping stones, not roadblocks. Think back to a recent challenge you faced. Maybe it was a disagreement with a loved one, an unexpected financial setback, or a time when things just didn't go as planned. What would it look like to love that moment? Could you find a way to see it as a teacher, offering you something to learn or a chance to grow? This doesn't mean sugarcoating the difficulty, but rather asking yourself, how can this serve me rather than hold me back? When you adopt Amor Fati, life's unpredictability stops being something to fear. Instead, it becomes a canvas for you to paint your own colors, no matter what. Overthinking fades because you're no longer stuck wishing for a reality that doesn't exist. You're fully present in the one that does, ready to adapt, learn, and thrive. And that is where true freedom begins. Overthinking often thrives on fear, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of what if. It feels like your mind is trying to outrun every possible negative outcome, but instead it traps you in an endless loop of anxiety. Here's where the Stoics introduce a surprisingly counterintuitive yet incredibly effective practice: negative visualization. Marcus Aurelius framed this mindset beautifully when he advised, begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. Why? Not to set a gloomy tone for the day, but to prepare his mind for life's inevitable challenges. When you brace for adversity, it loses its ability to overwhelm you. Negative visualization, sometimes called premeditating adversity, is about imagining worst-case scenarios, not to dwell on them, but to face them head-on in your mind so they lose their power over you. It might seem strange to willingly think about things going wrong, but here's the key. By intentionally visualizing how things could go badly, you strip those fears of the uncertainty that fuels overthinking. You develop a sense of calm readiness, knowing that if the worst does happen, you're mentally equipped to handle it. This practice helps you not just endure potential setbacks, but gain a fresh perspective on them. Here's how it works in a relatable context. Picture this: you've got an important presentation coming up at work. The stakes feel high and your mind starts spiraling. What if you forget your key points? What if your slides don't load? What if your boss doesn't like your delivery? Instead of trying to suppress those thoughts, bring them to the surface. Imagine it all: the slide deck malfunctioning, stumbling over your words, even the awkward silence in the room. walk through the worst-case scenario step by step. Then ask yourself, what would I do if this actually happened? Maybe you'd calmly summarize your points without the slides. Maybe you'd take a deep breath, laugh it off, and find your rhythm again. As you imagine these possibilities, you realize the situation might not be as catastrophic as it feels. It's inconvenient, yes, but it's manageable. What's fascinating is how this exercise clarifies what really matters. You may realize that even if things go south, your career isn't over. You're still capable of finding solutions, learning from the experience, and moving forward. Negative visualization turns what feels like an uncontrollable fear into a scenario you've already rehearsed in your mind. You reclaim your power by turning fear into preparation. But here's the best part: this practice also deepens your gratitude. After visualizing what could go wrong, you're often reminded of how much is already going right. If that presentation goes smoothly or even just okay, you'll appreciate it in a way you may not have before. You start to see that the worst-case scenarios you've built up in your head are often far less likely or severe than they seemed when left unexamined. Think about a situation in your own life that's been stressing you out. What's the worst that could happen, and how could you respond if it did? When you confront those fears directly, they shrink. Negative visualization doesn't just prepare you for the storms, it helps you see that often they're not as fierce as they appeared from a distance. With this practice, overthinking loses its grip and you regain your sense of clarity and confidence. Now, doesn't that feel freeing? Why is it that we spend so much of our time anywhere but the present moment? Think about it. How often do you find your mind drifting to mistakes from the past, replaying conversations, or worrying about what might happen tomorrow? Overthinking thrives in these spaces, the what-ifs of the future and the if-onlys of the past. And yet, when we focus on these things, we miss the one thing we actually have, this moment right now. The Stoics deeply understood this concept. Marcus Aurelius wrote in *Meditations*, confine yourself to the present. For the Stoics, the present moment was all we truly possess. The past is beyond our control, it's set in stone. The future isn't guaranteed, it's little more than a possibility. But the present, that's where we have power. That's where life is happening. Overthinking pulls us away from it, keeping us trapped in worlds we can't change or control. But what if instead we grounded ourselves in the now? Consider something as simple as eating a meal. How often do we really experience it? Maybe we're scrolling on our phones or replaying yesterday's interactions in our head. Maybe we're planning our to-do list for the rest of the day. In doing so, we miss the textures, the flavors, and even the chance to appreciate the nourishment our body is receiving. The same thing happens during conversations, walks, or even quiet moments. Our attention is hijacked by the past or future, leaving us physically present but mentally elsewhere. The Stoic practice of focusing on the present is a powerful antidote to this mental clutter. It's about intentionally bringing your awareness back to what's in front of you. This idea might sound familiar because it echoes modern mindfulness practices. Mindfulness, like Stoicism, invites us to pay attention to the here and now, whether it's through focusing on our breath, observing our surroundings without judgment, or simply immersing ourselves fully in what we're doing. The more we tune into the present, the quieter our racing thoughts become. Instead of replaying past regrets or fearing future outcomes, we begin to notice and appreciate the small, often overlooked moments that make up our lives. Here's an exercise you might try. The next time you catch yourself overthinking, pause, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is happening right now? Narrow your focus. Maybe you're sitting in a chair, notice the way it feels beneath you. Maybe you're listening to a sound, really hear it. Maybe you're walking, pay attention to the sensation of your steps on the ground. By anchoring yourself in the present moment, you create space to release the grip of overthinking and feel a sense of calm and clarity. Now, let me ask you, how might your life look different if you started practicing this habit daily? Imagine giving yourself permission to stop rehashing the past or predicting the future and instead fully engage with where you are. How much mental energy could you save? How much more connected might you feel to the people and experiences around you? The Stoics weren't asking us to ignore the past or the future. They understood their importance. But they also recognized that dwelling there robs us of the power and peace that comes from living in the present. By choosing to focus on the now, you quiet the noisy chatter in your mind and open the door to clarity, purpose, and a deeper appreciation for life as it unfolds. So the next time you feel your thoughts spinning out of control, remember, the present is all you truly possess. Make it count. What if overthinking is stealing the precious moments you'll never get back? It's a sobering question, but one that the Stoics believed held immense power. They called this practice Memento Mori, which means remember you will die. At first, this might sound grim or uncomfortable, but it's actually one of the most liberating reminders in Stoicism. By acknowledging the inevitability of death, we gain clarity about what truly matters in life. We stop sweating the small stuff, stop wasting time in mental loops, and refocus on living with intention. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Think about that for a moment. How much of your day is consumed by overthinking things that, in the grand scheme, don't really matter? Whether it's replaying an awkward conversation, stressing over minor decisions, or worrying about things beyond your control, these mental habits eat away at the limited time you have on this earth. And here's the truth, every moment spent overthinking is a moment you'll never get back. Memento Mori isn't about fear, it's about perspective. By reflecting on the fact that our time is finite, we get a sharper sense of what deserves our attention and energy. The practice prompts us to ask, is this worth my time? Will this matter when I'm at the end of my life? When you're caught up in overthinking, those questions can be a compass guiding you back to what's truly meaningful. Imagine you knew today was your last day. Would you spend it worrying about things you can't control? Would you ruminate over things that went wrong last week? Chances are you'd focus on what's most important, connecting with loved ones, pursuing your passions, or simply soaking in life's small joys. You'd let go of the trivial anxieties and fully embrace the present moment. That's the gift of Memento Mori *. It reminds us to live intentionally rather than getting caught up in the noise of overthinking. Here's an example of how this could look in practice. Let's say you're obsessing over a decision, whether to take a new job, move to a new city, or commit to a big change. You're running through every possible scenario, trying to predict outcomes and avoid regret. Instead of letting those thoughts spiral, pause and reflect. If my time were limited, what choice would bring me the most fulfillment? What aligns with the life I want to live? This perspective helps cut through the clutter and focus on what truly matters. Memento Mori also teaches us gratitude. By remembering that life is fleeting, we come to appreciate it more deeply. Everyday moments, a conversation with a friend, the warmth of the sun, a moment of quiet take on new significance. Overthinking fades because you begin to see how precious each moment really is. When you approach life with this mindset, even challenges and setbacks become part of a life fully lived, rather than burdens to overanalyze. So, here's a question to reflect on. If you knew your time was limited, how would you spend today? What would you let go of and what would you focus on? Contemplating these questions isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to empower you. Life is unpredictable and none of us know how much time we have left. But that's exactly why now is the time to stop letting overthinking steal your energy and start living with purpose. Remember, you will die, but within that truth lies the incredible freedom to truly live. What if your thoughts were just like clouds passing by, drifting through the sky without any need to hold on to them? Some are light and fluffy, others dark and heavy, but none of them stay forever. This image captures the essence of cognitive distancing, a crucial Stoic practice that teaches us to step back and observe our thoughts as temporary and separate from who we are. For many of us, overthinking feels like being stuck in a storm. We're pulled into every thought, believing them to be absolute truths. But what if we could create enough space to see our thoughts for what they really are, fleeting moments in our mind, not permanent realities? Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, said, "People are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." In other words, it's not the events themselves that cause us stress or anxiety, but the way we interpret them. If we let every thought define us or take every mental story as fact, we end up tangled in a web of our own making. Cognitive distancing is the Stoic solution. It's about recognizing that we are not our thoughts. Instead of reacting emotionally or spiraling into overanalysis, we can observe our thoughts objectively, almost as if watching them from the outside. Here's how this practice works. Imagine you get an email from your boss asking for a quick meeting later in the day. Your mind might immediately jump to conclusions. Did I do something wrong? Am I about to get criticized? What if this ruins my whole career? Before you know it, your thoughts have snowballed into a full-blown scenario built entirely on speculation. But cognitive distancing invites you to pause and take a step back. Instead of getting caught up in the narrative, you can ask yourself, is this absolutely true, or is it just a thought I'm having? What evidence do I really have? By creating this mental distance, you can see the anxiety for what it is, a story you've constructed, not a proven reality. Visualization can be a powerful tool for practicing cognitive distancing. Picture your thoughts as external objects like clouds floating by, leaves drifting down a river, or cars passing on a busy street. Each thought comes into view, but it doesn't stay forever. You don't need to run after it, hold on to it, or attach any deep meaning to it. It's just a thought, and like everything else, it will pass. This mental shift helps you depersonalize your thoughts and see them as just one part of your experience, not the whole of it. Here's a reflective exercise to try today. For just 5 minutes, sit quietly and observe your thoughts as they arise. Instead of reacting to them or judging them, simply notice them. Label them if it helps, "That's a worry," or "That's a memory," and then let them go. The power of this practice lies in the realization that you are the observer, not the thoughts themselves. You remain steady like the sky while the clouds of thought come and go. Cognitive distancing gives you freedom from overthinking because it breaks the illusion that every thought demands your attention or action. Epictetus reminds us that the power lies in interpretation, not the events or thoughts themselves. By learning to observe and detach from your thoughts, you gain clarity, calm, and control. So today, try stepping back and observing your thoughts without judgment. What would happen if you treated them as passing clouds rather than storms you're caught in? You might just find the peace and perspective you've been searching for. Overthinking often feels like a tangled web inside your mind, a constant loop of thoughts that become more chaotic the longer they stay unexamined. The problem is when your thoughts remain trapped in your head, they lack clarity. They overlap, distort, and grow far larger than they need to be. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, knew this all too well. That's why he turned to a practice that has stood the test of time, journaling. His personal writings, now known as *meditations*, weren't meant for anyone else. They were his way of organizing his thoughts, examining his emotions, and reflecting on his actions, all tools for self-improvement. And what's remarkable is that this method, used centuries ago, can help you manage overthinking just as effectively today. Journaling is powerful because it externalizes your thoughts. When you write them down, you take them out of the swirling chaos of your mind and place them into the world where you can see them more clearly. Suddenly, these overwhelming ideas no longer feel so daunting. They're just words on a page. You can evaluate them, question them, and even let them go. Overthinking thrives on unexpressed mental clutter, but journaling clears that space. It turns vague worries into something tangible you can work through. Take Marcus Aurelius' approach as an example. In Meditations, he often wrote about his struggles, not to dwell on them but to better understand them. He questioned his own reactions, reminded himself of Stoic principles, and identified where he could improve. His writings were deeply reflective yet practical. For instance, he would write reminders to focus on what he could control or reflections on how fleeting life is, grounding himself in the philosophy he practiced. This wasn't just an intellectual exercise, it was a way to confront his thoughts, challenge his assumptions, and realign with his values. So how can you use journaling to stop overthinking? Start by setting aside just a few minutes each day. Find a notebook or even a digital space where you can write freely without judgment. The key isn't to produce something polished or profound. It's simply to get your thoughts out of your head. To help guide you, here are a few prompts you can try. What am I overthinking today and why? What can I control in this situation and what can't I? Or what's the worst case scenario here and how likely is it to happen? These questions encourage self-reflection and help you separate fact from fear, which is often the root of overthinking. For example, let's say you're overthinking a conflict with a friend. You keep replaying the conversation, worrying if you said the wrong thing. Writing about it might reveal that your concern stems from wanting to maintain the friendship, not from what was actually said. You might realize the best course of action is simply to reach out and clarify, rather than continuing to fuel the spiral of worry. By journaling, you're not just dumping your thoughts, you're analyzing them, learning from them, and ultimately letting them go. Journaling also creates a sense of accountability. When you reflect on your thoughts regularly, patterns start to emerge. You might notice recurring fears or negative beliefs that are driving your overthinking. Once you're aware of them, you can challenge and reframe them. Over time, this process helps you build a stronger, calmer mind, one that's less susceptible to spiraling and more focused on what truly matters. If you've never journaled before, the thought of starting might feel unfamiliar or even intimidating. But remember, your journal is just for you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Some days you might write a few sentences and other days you might fill pages. The important part is the practice itself, the act of slowing down, expressing your thoughts, and reflecting on them with honesty and curiosity. So let me ask you, what thoughts are you holding onto right now that could benefit from being written down? What's weighing on your mind that, if seen on paper, might lose its power over you? Journaling isn't just a way to untangle your thoughts, it's a tool for clarity, growth, and self-empowerment. As Marcus Aurelius showed us, the simple act of writing can turn mental chaos into calm, intentional action. Why not give it a try? You might just find the peace you've been looking for. Why does overthinking so often paralyze us? At its core, it's usually tied to one thing: seeking comfort and avoiding pain. We overanalyze decisions because we fear making the wrong choice. We replay conversations in our head because we're uncomfortable with the possibility of conflict. Our minds crave safety, certainty, and ease, and yet life rarely offers any of those things in abundance. This is where the Stoic practice of *voluntary discomfort* comes in. a transformative method for breaking free from the mental traps of overthinking and building true resilience. The Stoics believed that by deliberately exposing ourselves to discomfort, we could train our minds to face life's uncertainties with greater strength and clarity. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, practiced this idea regularly. He would set aside time to live as if he had lost everything, eating simple meals, wearing rough clothing, and experiencing the kind of hardships most people work tirelessly to avoid. Why would a wealthy Roman willingly subject himself to such discomfort? Because he understood that life is unpredictable. By facing discomfort on his own terms, Seneca not only prepared himself for misfortune, but also freed his mind from the fear of it. He could say to himself, if this is the worst that could happen, I can handle it. Now, voluntary discomfort doesn't mean you have to sleep on the floor or give up everything you own. It's not about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone in small, intentional ways to prove to yourself that you're stronger than you think, and to quiet the fear that feeds overthinking. For example, you might choose to skip your morning coffee for a day, walk to work instead of driving, or turn off your phone for an afternoon. These aren't life-altering sacrifices, but they're enough to remind you that you can function just fine without certain conveniences or comforts. Let's take a step back and look at how this can help with overthinking. When we're stuck in a loop of anxious thoughts, it's often because we're trying to protect ourselves from potential discomfort. We dwell on what-ifs, imagining every possible negative outcome because deep down we're afraid we won't be able to handle it. But voluntary discomfort flips that script. It proves to you in real, tangible ways that discomfort is not the end of the world, that you can face it, adapt to it, and even emerge stronger on the other side. Over time, this mindset frees you from the mental energy wasted on avoiding discomfort because you've already shown yourself that you can handle it. Here's an example to bring this to life. Imagine you've been overthinking a difficult conversation with a friend, one where you need to set boundaries or express a concern. You keep delaying it because you're afraid of the awkwardness or possible conflict. Practicing voluntary discomfort might look like leaning into the small, everyday discomforts that build courage. Speak up in a meeting, take a cold shower, or challenge yourself to spend a few hours without distractions. These acts seem unrelated, but they strengthen your ability to tolerate discomfort in general, making that tough conversation a little less intimidating when the time comes. So here's something to reflect on. What's one small, manageable discomfort you could embrace today? Maybe it's choosing not to check your phone first thing in the morning, or taking a walk in the rain instead of waiting for perfect weather. It doesn't have to be extreme, but it should nudge you out of your comfort zone, just enough to remind you that you're capable of handling the unexpected. Voluntary discomfort isn't just about resilience, it's about freedom. When you stop fearing discomfort, you stop being a prisoner to overthinking. You realize that no matter what happens, you have the strength to navigate it. As Seneca would say, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. By choosing to face discomfort, you take a powerful step toward quieting those imaginative fears and living a life guided by courage and clarity. So what will you choose to embrace today? What if their opinion didn't matter? Seriously, take a moment to let that sink in. What if the approval or judgment of others had absolutely no bearing on your happiness or sense of self-worth? How much of your overthinking stems from that nagging need to be liked, to be understood, or to meet someone else's expectations? The truth is, most of us spend far too much time worrying about how others perceive us. We analyze every word we say, every decision we make, and every action we take through the lens of, what will they think? But what if we've been looking through the wrong lens all along? The Stoics understood this deeply and warned about the dangers of chasing external validation. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, said, If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity. That's a hard truth to swallow, but it's also incredibly freeing. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from self-reliance, from grounding your sense of worth in your own values and actions rather than in the opinions of others. The moment you let go of needing someone else's approval, you reclaim your power. You stop being a puppet to the strings of external validation and start living authentically, guided by your own principles. Think about how much overthinking is tied to the fear of judgment. Perhaps you've hesitated to share an idea because you worried it wouldn't be well received. Or maybe you've spent hours replaying a conversation in your head, questioning whether you said the right thing. In these moments, the problem isn't the situation itself, it's your attachment to how others perceive you. The Stoics would challenge you to ask, why does their opinion matter more than your own? Are you living your life for them, or are you living it for yourself? One way to break free from this trap is to set personal standards for yourself rather than measuring your success or worth against others' opinions. The Stoics emphasized the importance of living in alignment with your own values, virtues like honesty, courage, and kindness. If you acted with integrity, then that's enough. Epictetus reminds us, who then is invincible, the one who cannot be upset by anything outside their reasoned choice. In other words, as long as your choices are guided by your values, no one else's opinion can shake you. Here's a practical exercise to start letting go of external validation. Create a list of your core values and personal standards. What do you want to embody in your actions, regardless of what anyone else thinks? For instance, if kindness is one of your values, focus on being kind because it aligns with who you are, not because you want others to notice or praise you for it. When you consistently act according to your own standards, you begin to build an internal sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on external approval. Now, let's reflect. Can you think of a time when you overthought something because you feared being judged? Maybe it was a decision you made, a risk you didn't take, or a dream you put on hold because you were worried about what others might say. How might that moment have been different if their opinion didn't matter, if you were focused only on whether your choice aligned with your values? Letting go of external validation doesn't mean you ignore others entirely. It means you stop letting their judgments define your worth or dictate your decisions. When you free yourself from the need for approval, you take the power away from others and bring it back to where it belongs, with you. Life becomes simpler, quieter, and more intentional. So, the next time you catch yourself spiraling into overthinking because of fear of judgment, ask yourself, whose opinion truly matters here? If the answer isn't your own, it might be time to let it go. True freedom comes when you stop living for others and start living in alignment with the person you've chosen to be. How often do you focus on what you lack rather than what you already have? It's a powerful question, and one that most of us don't pause to ask ourselves often enough. Overthinking thrives in a mindset of scarcity. We obsess over what's missing, what might go wrong, or what we wish were different. But what if instead we shifted our focus to everything we already have? The Stoics believed that gratitude isn't just a virtue, it's a weapon against anxiety and dissatisfaction. Seneca, one of the great Stoic minds, wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have." In other words, appreciating what's already in front of us is the key to peace of mind. Gratitude reframes our perspective. Overthinking, by its nature, pulls us into imaginary scenarios or traps us in a cycle of wanting more certainty, more answers, more control. But when you consciously practice gratitude, you interrupt this cycle. Instead of focusing on what's missing, you draw your attention to the abundance that's already present in your life, no matter how small it might seem at first. And here's the beautiful part. Gratitude isn't just a mental exercise, it's a shift in how you experience the world. It grounds you in the present moment and opens your eyes to blessings you may have overlooked. So how do you bring this into practice? Start with a simple exercise. The next time you catch yourself spiraling into overthinking, pause and name 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be grand or life-changing sometimes. It's the small things that matter most. Maybe it's the warmth of your morning coffee, the sound of birds outside your window, or a kind word from a friend. By naming these things, you redirect your mental energy away from worry and toward appreciation. It's like hitting a reset button for your mind. Here's an example. Imagine you're overthinking a presentation you're about to give. You're caught up in thoughts like, what if I mess up? What if they don't like my ideas? Now pause and shift. What can you be grateful for in this moment? Maybe it's the opportunity to share your knowledge and grow in your career. Maybe it's the preparation you've already put in or the support of a colleague who encouraged you. As you focus on these things, your mindset begins to change. Gratitude doesn't erase the challenge, but it gives you strength and clarity to face it. The Stoics also taught us that gratitude goes beyond external things. It's about appreciating the life you've been given and even the challenges that shape you. Seneca reminds us that life itself is a gift, one we often take for granted in our rush to chase more. He wrote, "He is a great man who uses earthenware dishes as if they were silver, and yet is not less careful with his silver than if it were earthenware." The message here is clear. When you learn to see the value in what you already have, whether it's simple or extraordinary, you unlock a sense of wealth that overthinking can't diminish. Now, let me ask you, when was the last time you paused to truly appreciate the small, everyday things in your life? The next time you find yourself stuck in a mental loop, worrying about what you lack or trying to predict every possible outcome, try this. Stop and name 3 things you're grateful for. Then notice how your perspective begins to shift. Gratitude doesn't solve every problem, but it reminds you of the abundance that's already within your reach. Instead of being weighed down by the endless what-ifs, you begin to feel lighter, more present, and more grounded. It's a practice the Stoics knew well, and one you can carry with you every single day. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, will this thing I'm obsessing over still matter in a year's time? It's a simple question, but one that can instantly cut through the fog of overthinking. Often, we get so caught up in the details of today, the mistakes, the worries, the endless what-ifs, that we lose sight of the bigger picture. This is where the Stoic practice of perspective shifting comes in, a method for zooming out and seeing our concerns for what they truly are, fleeting moments in the vastness of life. Marcus Aurelius, in his timeless work *Meditations*, encourages us to take a cosmic perspective. He reminds us that our lives are but a tiny thread in the immense tapestry of time and space. He wrote, "Observe how transient and trivial all mortal things are. Yesterday a drop of semen, tomorrow a handful of ashes." Now, before you think this sounds depressing, consider the power behind these words. Marcus isn't suggesting that life lacks meaning, quite the opposite. By recognizing the smallness of our daily struggles, we free ourselves from their grip. We realize that many of the things we overthink, what someone said, a mistake we made, or a fear about tomorrow, are just tiny blips in a much larger story. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you made a minor mistake at work. It might be something as small as sending an email with a typo or fumbling your words during a presentation. Your mind starts spinning. What will people think of me? Will this affect how my boss sees me? Why didn't I catch that mistake sooner? Overthinking magnifies the error, making it feel like a defining moment in your life. But now, let's apply the Stoic practice of perspective shifting. Step back and ask yourself, in 5 years or even just 1 year, will this matter? Will anyone else even remember this happened? Chances are the answer is no. And if that's the case, why let it take up so much mental energy now? When you zoom out, you start to see these moments for what they are: temporary, forgettable, and far less significant than they feel in the moment. Taking this one step further, Marcus Aurelius also invites us to reflect on our place in the cosmos. Consider how vast the universe is: billions of galaxies, stars, and planets, stretching across incomprehensible distances and time spans. Within this grand scale, our lives are incredibly brief and our worries even smaller. This isn't meant to make us feel insignificant, but rather to remind us to focus on what truly matters. Why waste precious time agonizing over a slight embarrassment or fear of judgment, when in the grand scheme, these things are like grains of sand on an endless beach? So how can you practice perspective shifting in your everyday life? The next time you're consumed by overthinking, try this. Take a moment to imagine yourself a year from now. Will this worry still hold the same weight? Then, go even bigger. Zoom out and picture how this moment fits into the course of your entire life. Is it really as defining or catastrophic as it feels? Lastly, imagine looking at your situation from the perspective of the cosmos. Viewed from the stars, does this still seem as urgent or overwhelming? This isn't about dismissing your emotions or pretending your concerns don't exist. It's about reframing them, putting them into context, and recognizing that you have a choice in how much power you give them. When you shift your perspective, you gain clarity, and with that clarity comes freedom. You see your worries for what they are, passing moments that, in the vastness of time, will fade like footprints in the sand. So, what would happen if you chose to zoom out today? How might your current worries look from a wider, more balanced lens? Overthinking often thrives in isolation. When you're alone with your thoughts, it's easy for them to spiral unchecked. A small worry can balloon into a massive problem when there's no one there to help you see it from a different perspective. The Stoics understood this all too well. They believed that human beings are inherently social creatures, designed to support and learn from one another. In fact, Epictetus emphasized the importance of community, saying, "We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth." In other words, we're strongest when we work together and lean on each other for wisdom and support. Think about the last time you were stuck in a cycle of overthinking. Maybe it was a decision you couldn't make, a fear that felt too big to handle, or a problem you just couldn't solve. Now ask yourself, did keeping it to yourself help? Or did it make things heavier, harder to untangle? Often, when we're caught in our own heads, it feels like there's no way out. But the moment you share your thoughts with someone else, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a mentor, things start to shift. They offer a new perspective, ask questions you hadn't considered, or simply give you the space to hear your own thoughts out loud. That connection, that exchange of ideas, is often the key to breaking free from the endless loop of overthinking. The Stoics valued these kinds of connections deeply. For them, community was not just about companionship, it was about shared wisdom. They believed that no one has all the answers, but through dialogue and mutual support, we come closer to truth and clarity. Epictetus encouraged his students to engage in meaningful conversations, to seek out teachers and peers who could challenge their thinking and encourage their growth. This practice doesn't just help you find solutions, it reminds you that you're not facing life's challenges alone. So how can you apply this Stoic principle to your life? The next time you feel overwhelmed by overthinking, try this. Reach out to someone you trust. It could be a friend who always seems to offer a calming perspective, a family member who knows you well, or even a colleague who has experience in the area you're struggling with. Explain what's on your mind, not necessarily expecting them to solve it for you, but simply to share in the process of unpacking it. Often, the act of speaking your thoughts out loud helps you see them more clearly. And if they do offer advice, it's an opportunity to gain wisdom from another perspective, something the Stoics would say is invaluable. If you're not sure who to turn to, take a moment to reflect. Who in your life has consistently brought you clarity, strength, or comfort? Maybe it's someone who knows how to listen without judgment, or someone whose insight often surprises you. And if you feel like you don't have that person right now, perhaps this is a chance to build deeper connections. Joining a group with shared interests, attending community events, or even starting a conversation with someone new can open doors to the kind of mutual support the Stoics cherished. Let me ask you this: when was the last time you leaned on someone for support? Or flipped around, when was the last time someone leaned on you? The beauty of community is that it's a two-way street. By being open with others, you not only lighten your own mental load but often inspire others to do the same. The Stoics remind us that we are not alone in our struggles. There is strength in shared experiences and wisdom in collective thought. So, the next time you feel trapped in a cycle of overthinking, remember, you don't have to untangle it all by yourself. Look to the people around you. Their support might be the clarity you've been searching for. What if you focused on being your best self instead of being consumed by your worst fears? It's a profound shift in perspective, and one that the Stoics considered to be at the very heart of their philosophy. Overthinking often pulls us away from who we truly want to be, trapping us in cycles of doubt, fear, and uncertainty. But the Stoics teach us that when we align our actions with our core values, when we cultivate our inner virtue, we gain clarity, peace, and a sense of purpose that overthinking simply cannot touch. The Stoics believed that the ultimate goal of life was to live virtuously, guided by principles like wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These weren't just abstract ideals to admire, they were practical tools for navigating life's challenges. Seneca once wrote, "The good character of a person shines forth in their actions, not their words." This reminds us that living in alignment with our virtues isn't about overanalyzing every situation or second-guessing our every move. It's about consistently choosing actions that reflect our highest values, even in the face of uncertainty. When you focus on virtues like wisdom, courage, and justice, something remarkable happens. The noise in your mind begins to settle. Think about it, overthinking often stems from fear, whether it's fear of failure, fear of making the wrong choice, or fear of judgment. But when you act in accordance with your values, you can move forward with confidence, knowing that your decisions are rooted in something steady and meaningful. For example, if justice is one of your core values, and you've made a decision that you believe is fair and ethical, does it really matter what others think? If courage is your guiding principle, then taking bold action, even if it's imperfect, becomes more important than endlessly replaying all the potential outcomes in your mind. Here's a way to bring this into your daily life. The next time you're stuck in a loop of overthinking, try reflecting on the situation through the lens of your values. Ask yourself, what does wisdom look like here? Maybe it's stepping back to see the bigger picture or seeking guidance from someone you trust. Then ask, what would courage require of me in this moment? Perhaps it's taking that leap you've been hesitating on or speaking up when it feels uncomfortable. Follow this with how can I act justly? Maybe it's ensuring your actions consider the needs of others, not just your own. And finally, what role does temperance play here? Perhaps it's reminding yourself to find balance, to avoid extremes, and to let go of thoughts that no longer serve you.